Well, hello, my friends. It has been a while. It's certainly been a while since we've done a proper video like this. For those of you what don't know, and in case you haven't guessed from the title, probably the thumbnail, but it's probably hard to tell from the thumbnail in all fairness, I managed to get back into my old Dunswell Zoo file. So here we are. This, of course, just randomly stopped working. But update. What are we on? 111? I think that worked. I think that's what fixed this. If not, it was something to do with the mods. But I genuinely thought it was a save file corruption. So who knows? Either way, I'm back in, is the point. But I posted on Instagram that I'd be doing a tour, which is this video, and showing you all sort of what you've already seen if you've seen the series before, but also a couple of things what you haven't seen, because I'd built them in advance in preparation for the rest of the series, which of course never went ahead, unfortunately, because I got shut out of the map. So we have since started a new Dunswell Zoo, and I have decided I'm going to stick with that Dunswell Zoo rather than this one. However, we may be returning to this map, but I'll get onto that in either this video or another video. Might just do it in this one. Anyway, let's crack on with the tour. Make sure you follow me on Instagram if you don't already. I tend to be most active on there. I do have a Discord, but I genuinely don't know what I'm doing with Discord. So yeah, so here we are at the entrance to Dunswell Zoo's car park. So we would of course come down here. Got your coach parking on the right. You've got your pedestrian path on the left and this barrier between the two. And then you can either go straight on or you can turn right. Immediate right is, of course, coaches only. And then cars only is this one. And then you can follow the road round, which brings you pretty much to the front doorstep of Dunswell Zoo. So in my recreation of Dunswell Zoo, the Dunswell Zoo 2.0, this building is still the same. There isn't a road right outside of it now, though. So we shall... Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, this building is still the same. It's still got this sort of plaza out front. It's just that the car park is now like sort of right up there. There isn't this road there anymore. So we shall, from this point onwards, head into explore mode, and we shall explore the zoo like this. So I've shut the zoo just so it's a bit smoother. Everything is on pause, of course. I don't know why they're stuck there, but they are displaying the new balloons from the anniversary update. None of them have the animal balloons though, unfortunately. They're all the anniversary balloons. Not to worry though, I'm not too fussed. In fact, I think today, the day I'm recording this, is actually the 3-year anniversary of Planet Zoo, the 5th of November. I'm sure it came out on the 5th of November 2019. So, happy anniversary, Planet Zoo. All of this is more or less still the same. The gift shop is ever so slightly different in the new Dunswell Zoo, but I'll show you that in the new one. The restaurant's still the same. Inside here is a little bit different in the new one. So those still need redoing for the new one. None of this is set up yet in the new Dunswell Zoo conservation station. That's set up, and these are set up, of course. Then we come around here. This is all completely different in the new Dunswell Zoo. I'm sure you've already seen that because I have shown it off on the channel before. It's nowhere near as open and nicely planted. It's a much more typical, serves its purpose, maintenance yard sort of deal. To be fair, as much as I like this building, which I didn't build, I just extended it. As much as I like it, it doesn't really work for Sandbox, because you had like your staff room, your workshop, your research centre, your veterinary surgery, stuff like that, quarantine. All I've done is put staff rooms in it. Staff room here, there's a staff room there, and there's a staff room there, because there are no animals around here what need the veterinary surgery, and there are no need for a quarantine either. There's no research needed, there's no workshop needed, so it's just a bit of a waste. So the new Dunswell Zoo has put that area to more appropriate zoo use. The only downfall is it's not as open and green, which is unfortunate. All of this is still the same, because I've of course seen all of this before if you've been following the series. This is the same with the exception of the roof. I had to flatten the roof because the monorail goes over the shops in the new Dunswell Zoo. You've seen all this before. So let's start with the Australia area, just because it's the nearest one. All of this is still the same in the new Dunswell Zoo. This is where things start to get vastly different. So this sort of statue area and the signs are still the same. This isn't. So here, in this version of Dunswell Zoo, we had our yellow-footed rock wallaby, made by Leaf, if I remember correctly. And they had this quite nice themed habitat where it sort of very much invokes the outback, and there's a heavy sort of orangey, browny tone to the entire habitat, both the rocks and the sort of viewing surrounds. We'll just pop in the habitat. I don't recommend doing this in an actual zoo. You could see they could come up here and use the enrichment, and they could stand on here. This back bit was sort of completely out of view from the guests, unless they were using the monorail. Perfectly fine by me, because the majority of people came here anyway, because that's the best view you get of the habitat. Everywhere else is sort of a bit blocked off. That's not there in the new Dunswell Zoo. You will see what's there when I do the tour of the new Dunswell Zoo. Then over to our right here we have the red kangaroos and the emus. Of course, emus are modded, so they're not here at the moment. Also, the curbs are ridiculously high, because even though I flattened the entire map, apparently it got flattened to different levels, and the curbing looks ridiculous over here, whereas in other places in the zoo it's fine. In the new Dunswell Zoo, the curbing is fine, thankfully. But yeah, we have our red kangaroos in here, and our emu. Sort of loosely themed shelter, excuse me. Quite small, and then of course it's got this little shut off area around the back. The new red kangaroo and emu habitat is, I would say it's larger and more appropriate for the two species. It's definitely more thoughtful of the two different needs that these species will have. So we'll whiz by the educator there. And then we have the wallaby walkabout, which you will of course seen before. So you push through this door, cross over, push through that door. That's an airlock system. Of course, the wallabies are modded, so they're not in here. I haven't yet recreated this in the new Dunswell Zoo. That will be an episode coming up at some point, but it will look quite similar to this in terms of it's a walk-through habitat. There are very low fences that the wallabies can jump over, but the guests can't. This isn't going to be in the new wallaby habitat. I really don't like this. So I did start working on the interior, but yeah, it just doesn't fit with the rest of the habitat. I don't like it. But of course, the whole point of this was you could see the village of Dunswell sort of poking through in certain areas. So you've got the little church there, and then near the entrance you could see some of the city, well, not really city, it's Dunswell village. You could see some of the village newer builds, like the apartments and stuff like that. But it's a nice large area. The guest part doesn't actually take up that much room, so there's plenty of room for the wallabies to get away from people should they so wish. And of course there was education going on in here. Different fence down the side. Don't know if I showed that off, but that was a solid fence at some point, and it's now much neater. And then again you'd push through this side, cross over, push through that side. Of course you don't have directionality in Planet Zoo, so people just come and go as they please, but that's what we're working with. So something which you haven't seen yet then is, so after the Andean bear habitat, it was going to be the Pantanal pool, which is like a wetland aviary for flamingos, spoonbills, ibises, and southern screamers. And then it was going to be the kiwi habitat, which was going to be the first sort of nocturnal habitat that I'd ever built, like ever. And this was the start of it. So you'd have this sort of airlock-ish system where you'd come through here, and then once you're inside this area, it would be completely dark. And then you would view the kiwis through this habitat window thing. It is one-way glass, just because obviously kiwis are very secretive creatures, and we wouldn't want any light sort of bleeding in. It's definitely big enough for them, and it's double walled as well, which I quite like. It's the first time I've ever done that as well. It's going to have a custom roof, and there's going to be red lighting. It was going to be amazing. The kiwis will of course be making an appearance in the new Dunswell Zoo, but it's not going to look like this. It's something very different indeed. And then we cut through at the other side. The dingoes were going to go in here. The dingoes now have a substantially bigger home in the new Dunswell Zoo. I'd completely forgotten what was going to go here, but I, for whatever reason, had pushed the boundary back. Maybe I was going to put the dingoes over there, actually. I don't know. Then we come round here. And then we have the Australian food court. Now, I really like in the Australian scenario, I'm sorry if you can hear magpies outside. We have the Australian scenario, I forgot what it's called now. But in that, they have some facilities, some shops that are built into shipping containers, and I really like that idea. And Dunswell Zoo is going to be this sustainable, environmentally friendly place. So the shipping containers will be making a reappearance. They'll be disused shipping containers, and rather than them just being scrapped or left to rust somewhere, they've been given a lick of paint and things have been built into them. So there's a food court. The ones up there are just sort of for decoration. This wasn't final. Stuff was going to be moved around. Yeah, lovely little food court, which of course is right next to the back of the kiwi house and the koala and wombats. So, ironically, we now have wombats in the game. We have the common wombat. Can I see any koalas while we're here? I doubt it. Probably inside. But initially, the wombats were modded, and they used the koala rig, so you'd see wombats climbing alongside koalas, and it just looked very weird. So I separated the two species in the new Dunswell Zoo. So the common wombats have their own habitat, and the koala, in this case the Queensland koala, they have their own habitats. And now we get a common wombat in the game officially, and they can cohabitate, even though it's not part of the interspecies enrichment. So if the southern hairy-nosed wombat gets put on the common wombat rig for the mod, then I'll probably have the Victorian koala and the southern hairy-nosed wombat have a shared habitat. That might be a koala back there, actually. I think it is. But yeah, so we had two groups of wombats and koalas representing two very different habitat styles. So this one's much more open, much more sort of outbacky, deserty, arid like. And obviously this one we've just been looking at is a little bit more temperate. It's green, it's well planted, lots of shade. Because it's not just about showing the animals, it's about recreating the habitat. Because of course it's all well and good saving the animals, but if they don't have the appropriate habitat to go back to, you're still dealing with a sinking ship, unfortunately. And there's a koala over there. So yeah, the Australia house. You will have seen the new Australia house in the new Dunswell Zoo. It is substantially bigger than this. But it also houses more species, so there is that to take in mind. So we come through here. You have staff access on the right for the wallabies. You have indoor koala and wombat on the left. This leads you up to the monorail, which is built into the back of the Australia house. And then you would, of course, step down and sit in there. And if you're coming from elsewhere in the zoo, you would enter this way over the platypus habitat. And of course, if you're going to the main entrance, it goes over the wallaby house, round the back, and curves that way. So I'll just head back. This is just like a little jungle, just for people to look at whilst they're waiting for the monorail. Can get pretty close, to be fair, to the koalas and wombats. I think that's one back there. Yes, it is. I'm very good at spotting animals today. And then, of course, you have the exit from the monorail. And then on the right would be the platypus habitat. I loosely started doing what would have been the viewing window for underwater. And then the land would be sort of at the back. That design has completely changed for the new Dunswell Zoo. Then we've got the other indoor koala and common wombat habitat. And I'm not seeing anything in here other than the one that I saw outside. Oh, no, there we go. There's one. And then we have our giant burrowing cockroach, which are right up front and centre. And they're linked to the fact that they're primarily found on the forest floor in eucalyptus forests, and they help to keep that part of the ecosystem alive. Of course, eucalyptus forests are integral to the survival of koalas, and that's why they're here. So then this habitat is, or was, the greater bilby. Upon further research in the greater bilby, however, they are in fact nocturnal. So they're now in an Australian nocturnal house in the new Dunswell Zoo. And the habitat looks very different, and it's not as big either, so there's that. And then on the right here, you have the numbat. Sort of under this tunnel. I'd imagine it'd get very hot under here though, because you've got a glass roof and then another glass roof. But this housed the numbats, and that's not good. That's where I am now. Stop being silly. Stop being silly, JW. The numbats were in here. I did consider splitting the habitat in half so that we could house even more numbats. I thought with them being so secretive, and with this being a large enough habitat, we could probably have a few more numbats than is maybe recommended. The numbats in the new Dunswell Zoo have a slightly different habitat. It's still as well planted, but it's not so long. It's a bit more semicircle-esque. And then, of course, we reach the end of the Australia house for this Dunswell Zoo. Through the doors. And then that's it. The rest of the Australia zone never got worked upon. So we have the Tasmanian devil. Do we have? Yes, we had the Tasmanian devils here. Then we had... oh god, what's this? The Queensland koala, the Victorian koala and the southern hairy-nosed wombat. They were going to be in here. And then that leaves this big one as the Australian sea lion. All of those species will, of course, be making a reappearance in the new Dunswell Zoo. But that's essentially the Australia zone done. So we shall... nothing got done in Africa, and only one thing got done in Asia. So actually we'll just speed on across to it, the one thing that got done in Asia. As you can see some of the city buildings, the town buildings, sorry, over there in the distance. So the only thing that got done in Asia before, the project stopped, was the Red Panda Plaza, which is where we had our monorail station for Asia. One of many monorail stations. So you disappear behind this bamboo, and then you come round, and then it's a lovely enclosed monorail station. But you can access this either via the Asian zone, which is just the start of the Asian zones over there, or South America. So rather than backtracking on ourselves, we're going to speed down this path as fast as the game will allow us to. And we're going to go to South America, which was the most developed zone of all of them. Just because I wanted to start with South America, really. So we follow the wiggly path. There was going to be like bamboo here, and it's going to be very sort of magical and mysterious. It might still be in the new iteration of Dunswell Zoo. So then we pass the food court. It's entirely the same in the new Dunswell Zoo, so I'm not going to show you the food court because you'll be seeing enough of it, essentially. And we go into South America. So everything on the left at the moment is more or less the same in the new Dunswell Zoo. The right is slightly different. We have a new staff zone. It's laid out very differently. And the Chicoan peccary habitat is also very different as well. But we reach the Pampas pastures. So we had the Chicoan peccaries here, which I think were possibly the first animal I ever built for in Dunswell Zoo. I think. Anyway, so the new habitat for the Chicoan peccaries is probably about the same size, if I had to guess. But it's very differently landscaped. It dips down a bit now. There's a pool of water at the end. So this feature where there's like flowers and stuff, that is there in the new Dunswell Zoo. It's a bit more mountainous. There's a little bit more indoor space as well, just because Dunswell Zoo was meant to be and will be, for as many species as possible, the breeding centre, if you like. So we would breed the most animals and then send them to other collections and do it that way, or back into the wild, stuff like that. You would then be brought out to the guanaco habitat, new one, probably the same size again, looking at it, but it's very differently landscaped. It's much more vertical. It's a little bit steep, the new one, and there's some viewing over there as well in the new one. Yeah, rather than it being sort of bumpy, the new one's a lot more sort of vertical. I am very tempted to re-landscape the guanaco habitat. It's maybe a little bit too vertical for my liking. Because of the toilets here, and then you could turn right to the Peruvian prairie, or you can continue with the pampas pastures. It's laid out differently in the new Dunswell Zoo. We have the greater rear here, whereas they're here in this one. So this was the greater rear habitat. The new habitat for the greater rear, it's maybe a little bit bigger, I'd say. It's not massively bigger, but it's probably a little bit bigger, yeah. Again, just because we're going to be housing more of that species. This is different as well in the new Dunswell Zoo. And then we come to the Peruvian prairie. We had bush dogs on the left. Their habitat in the new Dunswell Zoo is more or less the same. More or less the same size, more or less the same layout. We have the giant anteaters over here, and they had actually had a baby. So there should be 2 anteaters in here. The female and her daughter. Yeah, there's the other one, and there's the other one, and you can actually see the male at the back there. This habitat here, just for the giant anteaters, and then down here we had the giant anteaters and the South American coatis. Of course, they're modded, so they're not in here. We had this indoor viewing. It's very different in the new Dunswell Zoo, and also initially the plan was to have a door here, and the staff could essentially just cut straight through and join here, and then come out of here, and they would be in that staff area from before. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough room for that, so staff have to walk the long way around. Very different in the new Dunswell Zoo. I got education along the outside for environmental causes, stuff like that. Bush dogs there, maned wolves here, and then you would turn right, and that's where you enter the South America zone, and that's the Red Panda Plaza. So we will explore the rest of the Peruvian prairie first. So we had this obnoxious thing where the path sort of subsides, and this was the bush dogs. There was mixed viewing because they were getting stressed, so they had one-way glass, but then every so often we'd break it up with some mesh. And there was going to be some custom education there for bush dogs. And then over at this side we have the maned wolves. Their habitat in the new Dunswell Zoo is substantially bigger, I might actually reduce their habitat in the new Dunswell Zoo because it's a little bit ridiculously big. So that'll be something to do at some point, I reckon. It's more or less laid out the same. Just instead of the shelter, the staff access and stuff being there, it's over there, and there's no back viewing for the maned wolves anymore. Probably a little bit more forest cover as well. But again, that's because the habitat is bigger in the new Dunswell Zoo, so I may well reduce the size of that one. We'll see. Again, education. Then you would come through this little sort of cut through here, and you had the mountain tapirs here, and one of the custom donation billboards that I've done. You've not seen any of these yet, I don't think. Together we can save the rarest tapir in the world. Donate today. The little mountain tapir. So yeah, the mountain tapirs are in here. Their new habitat in Dunswell Zoo is probably the same size, maybe a little bit bigger. The viewing opportunities are definitely different in the new habitat, and the shelter isn't over there. It's sort of down here in the new one. And then of course you follow the path round, and you've got the back of the mountain tapir house, and then you get this other staff area which has access to the rear habitat, as well as sort of, you know, a little, I call it a dumping ground, this little work area. You got your staff facilities, got some insect stuff here, got another keeper hut back there. Then we had the indoor rear viewing, well, not viewing, but accommodation. More staff facilities. And then this little food court, this little, I don't know what you want to call it really. We had this just before the Pantanal Paradise. This is now next to the guanaco habitat, slightly raised on a hill. And then we head into the Pantanal Paradise, and again you can just sort of glimpse some of the buildings through the trees, just reminding you that you are in civilization. You're not in the middle of nowhere. And then we've entered our Pantanal Paradise, so things are very different here. There, you know, we've got gold, got capybara. There's lots of theming in this area. Something you haven't seen before is the Pantanal pool. Now, this is initially what it looked like. I was very set on having hexagonal roofs. The new one doesn't have that. It's probably about the same size, maybe a little bit bigger. I've tried to keep things as much the same size as I can, just because it worked the first time. Staff access in this version is down the side here, so it's sort of blocked off for the inhabitants and the guests really, so that they can't see what's going on behind the scenes. Got keeper hut, staff room, and then of course you have the staff access. There's 3 species of flamingo, 1 species of ibis, 1 species of spoonbill, and 1 species of screamer in the Pantanal pool. So again, airlock system, because it's a free flying aviary. And then you would come up here, and then because obviously the ibises and the spoonbills and the screamers, they're based on the, I think it's the peafowl. They needed access to somewhere that wasn't water. So they had this island, and then sort of the flamingos had everything else. The new version of this is very different. I think I prefer this version in terms of planting and stuff. There's Frank. Yeah, this version's probably better in terms of planting and the layout of the habitat. But the newer version allows for more viewing opportunities and for more natural behaviours. The path's not as wide in the new one as well. I probably should widen the path, to be fair. And then of course you come out of the airlock. And then something that was integral to this area, because it's all South American of course, but it's split up into zones. So when I think of the Pantanal, and when many people think of the Pantanal, they think of the Pantanal wetlands. So what I wanted to do was have this really sort of enriched wetland system. So we've got some implied information here that the water between this habitat here and the flamingos is all shared, and that it uses natural filtration from things like waterfalls and plants and air injections and circulation and stuff like that. And it was the importance of preserving these habitats and water use and so on and so forth. They're still there in the new Dunswell Zoo, but this is slightly different. So we had the Capybara Springs, which was home to our capybara, our white-faced saki monkeys, and our Azara's agoutis. The new version is still going to be home to those three. I do have a couple of species in mind what we can possibly add, but that would have to wait until the mods were available for them or they were added into the game officially. But you had this walkway where you could view the other side of this wetlands habitat. So the water flows through here and then comes out there, that kind of thing. And you can see that it's a chain link fence here, so the water just passes through, it's fine. So this was our Saki Island, and the white-faced Saki monkeys would come here, and all their enrichment and stuff's here. Now, there's a capybara. It's slightly different on the new one. It's a little bit more based on how the Saki monkeys are housed at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, but with my own twist, obviously. I prefer the planting in this version than I do in the new version, just because you get viewing opportunities like that. Like, you could imagine seeing them scurrying here and then popping out on these platforms, and it's not as easy to see that in the new Dunswell Zoo. But you'll see that at some point, I'm sure. Again, airlock system, blip bloop. Then we had these education depots. They're not here in the new Dunswell Zoo. They may get added. They might not. I haven't decided yet. Another one of the custom donations with a marsh deer. Support one of our many conservation projects in South America. There's no barriers in this habitat, because it's the same in Yorkshire Wildlife Park. In their walk through South American area, there's no barriers. The animals can come and go as they please. You're advised not to touch them, and you definitely shouldn't be feeding them. But they can cross your path should they so wish. And of course on the bridge you've got plenty of other viewing opportunities for the white-faced Saki monkeys, and the capybara, and the Azara's agouti. Now that the waterfall's not on, There's a little Easter egg. There's a gold, silver, and bronze capybara statue hidden beneath the waterfall. There's another capybara in there. And I've fallen through the path. That should not have happened. Then sort of hidden in the jungle, there was this shelter. It was mainly for the agoutis and the saki monkeys, because of course they could climb out of there. The capybara use it as well. It's just sort of an indoor area that it can be shut off if need be. So yeah, it's not functional though because of the way Planet Zoo's habitat system works. Then we've got the Saki monkey enrichment and stuff out here, just because the keepers, can't cross water. I have to put a bridge there, and I don't fancy that, so that's that. And then I actually prefer this. So in the new one, it doesn't have this rock wall, but I prefer the rock wall. Of course, got another education depot here. Stay with me, folks. We're nearly done. Don't worry. Then we have the Andean bears. This was the last episode that ever aired of Dunswell Zoo. So we had the male and the female split, and I think the had the opportunity to be viewed from Andean Eats. The restaurants there in the new one, it doesn't look like this, and it's not called Andean Eats. It's also not attached to the Andean bear habitat either. As cool as it would be to sort of sit and eat your lunch, just sat here eating lunch, and then, oh look, there's an Andean bear. It didn't sit right with me, really. So I got rid. And the new one doesn't have upstairs seating, although that view would be really cool, wouldn't it? It's an Andean bear on that platform, and you can see over at this side, if I just shoot through these doors here, it's kind of like a work area. It was going to be the jaguar habitat, and then we had the white-faced capuchin, I think, and the bird's tapir. We had the giant river otter, we had the marsh deer, there was the pampas deer, and the ocelots just around the corner. Excuse me. And that's essentially it. Yeah, marsh deer, capuchin, tapir, giant otter, ocelot, pampas deer was going to be in here. Jaguars, staff compound, reptiles at risk. There was going to be another entrance here for pedestrians coming through Dunswell Park. The Atlantic Forest area was going to be in here. Chilean coasts was going to be in here. And then the Asian zone was going to sort of fill this space. The African zone was going to fill this space, and then there'd be a little sort of European North American zone right at the back, if we ended up having the space for it, of course. That's it. That is the old Dunswell Zoo. That's as far as we got before things went disastrously wrong. Oh, and of course we had the modders and workshop creators asset memorial park. So we've got DanXG, who of course created the blank map template. Well, it's not blank, it's got buildings in it obviously, but you know what I mean. I've got Leaf, who just makes mods and is an incredible content creator and is a pretty nice guy. And then we've got sort of other mod makers and blueprint creators. There should be one for Paulsley. That was to commemorate the East Lake Seal Sanctuary, if you remember that, back in the day. Eastlake Animal Education Centre. Good boy. Narwhaler. Bubbly Wums. That's Jen. Nicholas Lion Rider. Open Ninja. Here's Paulsley. It's a shame that Paulsley's left YouTube now. He was a very big inspiration for me. He was the entire reason why I started Planet Zoo content creating. But I wish him all the best. I completely understand his reasons for leaving. And he made the right call. He did. But it is a real shame that he's no longer on YouTube. But that's the way life tends to go at the moment, isn't it? So yeah, that's it. So you could see where South America was going. You could see where Australia was going, and New Zealand. Asia was gonna fill this space. Africa was gonna fill that space, and then if I just shift forward a bit, there's gonna be like a temperate area at the back. There's also the butterfly trail here. So in the new version of Dunswell Zoo then, there's none of this. So Dunswell Park's not there. There's no buildings. None of this. There's no lakes. Not yet, anyway. There's no shops or church or any of that. It's a little bit more like Chester Zoo in the sense that although Chester Zoo is built near houses, the way you enter Chester Zoo and walking around Chester Zoo, it feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. And I really like that idea. It's the same with Yorkshire Wildlife Park as well, where it's built on the outskirts of Orkley, I think, near Doncaster. And the car park's massive, and it's like a 10-minute walk from the car park to the entrance for the wildlife park. And walking around the wildlife park, you do feel like you aren't near any houses at all, even though you are. It doesn't feel like that. So that's what I've gone for in the new Dunswell Zoo. Now, I am sticking with the new Dunswell Zoo. I am not returning to this map. However, the blank version of this map by Dan XG, so the one with the buildings and without all the stuff I've built, we may be using that in the future for another zoo, because of course this started off as the Eastlake Animal Education Centre, and then became Dunswell Zoo. That was the narrative that I was telling there. That's now had to change, so there's a new story for the new Dunswell Zoo. So Eastlake may return in some form on this map, but without all the stuff I've built, and we'll be starting again. And I'm very tempted. I'm not 100% convinced on the idea, but I'd like to know what you think. But I'm very tempted to do it vanilla, without mods. So Eastlake Animal Education Park, or whatever it's going to be called, something with Eastlake and animals. Just do it with vanilla, so the base game and the DLC packs. My reasoning for that is I'm not very fond of the Twilight pack. The animals are very well created, don't get me wrong, very well animated, and some of the new building sets will probably come in quite useful, but for me it's my least favourite DLC so far. We had some really good ones like the Conservation Pack and the Wetlands Pack, and it was on a roll. And for me, my personal opinion, I don't think the Twilight Pack is something the community wanted or needed. Having Halloween themed sets, having gothic architecture, stuff like that, it's not something people en masse were asking for. But raccoons, I get, quite popular animals, and skunks and stuff like that. But as I said in my sort of thoughts and opinions of update 1.11 and the Twilight Pack, they don't scream zoo animals to me because they're so readily available. You know, raccoons, they live in the wild in America and Canada. Foxes, across the majority of the world you will find red foxes. They are some of the most adaptable mammals you can find. Skunks, they don't scream zoo animals to me. Common wombats, okay, yeah, fair enough. I know a couple of places that have wombats, but they could have given us a wombat with some more conservation value. I think that would have probably gone down a little bit better. So because of that, I was thinking, what if I force myself to use those animals? So if I do a zoo or a wildlife park, whatever, with no mods, which means I have to use the animals what we have in the game. So if we just have a quick look, I don't want to take up too much of your time because there will be a separate video on this. So things like the American alligator and the black-tailed prairie dog and the red fox and the skunk and the raccoon and the badgers and the fallow deer and the red deer what came with the anniversary update, which is exceptionally well modelled, by the way. I love that red deer. Just stuff like that, animals that I never really use. Animals that aren't really zoo animals to me. So animals like the Nile lechwe, for example, they're going to be in the new Dunswell Zoo, as will the okapi and the platypus, and hopefully the polar bear and the proboscis monkeys. Pronghorn antelope isn't, so that might be another example of something to use there. Raccoon isn't, red deer isn't, although I'm hoping that the Pear David's deer mod will now use the red deer rig, because we're having Pear David's deer in the zoo. Fox, what other animals don't I really use? Spectacled caiman, skunk, so stuff like that. That's my thought process. But let me know what you guys think on that. Thank you for joining me so far. The adventure does continue with the new Dunswell Zoo, so remember to be subscribed and remember to have your notifications enabled so you don't miss that video when it goes live. But yeah, it's commemorative and what's the other word? Commiserative. It's a commemorative and commiserative experience, exploring where Dunswell Zoo started in this map and realising how the vision has changed as time has gone by and stuff like that. But we will not be continuing with this map. I prefer the new one. There's less restraints, I think, to try and fit everything into a pre-allocated space. And it just makes more sense, really. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, my friends. Please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It really helps me out. It helps the channel grow. We have passed 100 subscribers now, so thank you very much for that. So I will see you all in the next video, whether that will be the upcoming and existing zoos project or the first episode of the new series of Dunswell Zoo. I haven't quite decided yet. Either way, thank you for watching, stay safe and stay kind. And remember to leave your thoughts in the comment section on maybe what you'd like to see on the channel. Because for me, I'm fine just doing Dunswell Zoo and the Yorkshire Wildlife Park recreation. But let me know what you think about that plan where we have to use the vanilla animals. I think it'd be a really interesting experience, but There's no point doing it if people aren't going to watch it. Either way, I've talked for far too long, so I'm going to let you all go now. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and I shall see you all next time. Bye-bye for now.